Hello and welcome to the April 17th edition of the Bubb Report. Last week, Grenada's two major political parties held dueling rallies in Grenada's largest and most populous rural parish of St. Andrew. The rallies signaled the official opening salvo of the 2022 Grenada election season, which is not constitutionally due until the first quarter of 2023. The Prime Minister, though, was explicit that the elections may be called soon, breaking from his traditional pattern of calling elections after serving a full 5-year term.
This is a movement of change for Grenada, by Grenadians, and for the benefit of Grenadians. So whether you ring the bell in your back pocket, in your front pocket, in your side pocket, or from under your house, when the time comes, the people of Grenada are going to demonstrate that the movement for change is here, it's real, and we will ensure that we move Grenada forward. So Rhythm Section, let us begin that momentum to move Grenada forward. Thank you very much. I look forward to continuing this process of change.
And the news we have is that the people of Grenada, they're ready for the Nnp again. You hear me? I say I don't vote. I don't talk without data. I don't talk without seeing numbers. Sisters and brothers, I'm telling you, today, I had some good news. So put on your socks, put on your boots, get ready. The call is coming, sisters and brothers.
The Nnp relaunched its incumbent candidates, Delma Thomas for the St. Andrew Northwest constituency and Kate Lewis Peters for the St. Andrew Northeast constituency, respectively. Thomas won the Northwest constituency in 2013 and 2018 and inherited a constituency once represented by Aline Walker, Lorena Waldron, Innocent Belmar, and Nadia Benjamin. A notable historic fact about Belmar is that he was the first ever Grenadian politician to be assassinated in post-independence Grenada. On January 4, 1978, Belmar was gunned down at the Bamboo Bar in Adelphi, St. Andrew, at the height of the tensions between Gary's Green Beast and Mongoose Gang and the NJM opposition forces in Grenada. NDC's Aline Walker is so far the longest serving parliamentarian for that constituency, having represented both the NDC and the Nnp in the Grenadian Parliament. Over in St. Andrew Northeast, Nnp's incumbent Kate Lewis Peters inherits what has historically become an Nnp-safe constituency. The party was able to win the seat in the previous 6 election cycles, dating back to 1995. Lewis Peters is the second female to represent this constituency, inheriting the baton from Wapel Ned, one of the first female MPs to sit in the Grenadian Parliament after 1974. On the other side of the ledger, the National Democratic Congress launched its 4 candidates, all of whom come with some level of experience in the public service, having worked in different government departments. Gloria Thomas, for her part, had a candidacy that was paved with palace intrigue and an intra-party tug-of-war in the rural constituency. Sources tell us that the political leader favored Thomas over Philip Alexander, who was the preferred candidate by some in the party's rank and file. Gloria Thomas worked as a guidance and counseling officer and as the National Disaster Coordinator with the National Emergency Relief Organization, the organization that predated NADMA, and will be competing against Delma Thomas. David Andrew, for his part, also served in various capacities in the Ministry of Education, rising to the position of Chief Education Officer. The newcomer to frontline politics will be competing against his former boss, Emmeline Pear. Dr. Tessa Sincere first came to the political spotlight 2 years ago after being appointed to the Senate by the Honorable Tobias Clement, the leader of the opposition. She brings to the fore youth development experience, having served at the National Training Agency and at the Ministry of Youth Development, and will be vying to unseat the heavily fortified Nnp candidate in the Northeast. Economist Lennox Andrews served as Grenada's permanent secretary in the Ministry of Finance for 2 years, and before that studied economics, both in Cuba and Jamaica, and will be running against Yolan Bain Hosford in the St. Andrews Southwest constituency. This week on our program, we discuss the state of politics in Grenada as both parties gear up for when the Prime Minister rings the election bell. Our program would also assess the state of readiness of the country's Parliamentary Elections Office, which is tasked with the responsibility of ensuring that the elections are free and fair. We welcome our guests, Elvis Moraine, Grenada's Acting Supervisor of Elections, Cassandra Mitchell, social activist and representative of the grouping of civil society organizations, Michael Batiste, former Member of Parliament for the St. Andrews Southwest constituency, and Kenny Lal Singh, former Member of Parliament for the St. Patrick West constituency. We thank you for joining us. Memorializing and paying tribute to someone at the point of death, especially someone who has contributed to national development, instead of giving them their flowers when they're alive, can ring hollow. Saying RIP doesn't do justice to the legacies of people whose contributions have made a difference in their societies. One such person transitioned last week in Grenada at the General Hospital. Here at the Bubb Report, we remember musician, calypsonian, and prolific pianist Daniel Seeley for his worthy but underrated contribution to the culture. Seeley, who went by the calypso sobriquet The Scorpion, released a composition that captured the darkness and the blockbuster moments of Grenada's deadliest day on October 19, 1983. And songs that also captured the essence of Grenadian carnival and culture.
We used to be at the bottom of the totem pole, but now we are at the top, and we very had to stop. We'll be back into the business with the sweep and calypso. So get ready, I'm about to put on the show.
Scorpion was part of the star-studded cast of calypsonians who graced the Damask Grass stage in 1994 with his selection of Do It for the Carnival. In his 1994 performance, his musical prowess shone through, as he also gave us a treat in steel.
Leave your husband and wind up with Stumpy and do it. Do it. Do it. Do it for carnival. Hey. Come on and do it. 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 Do it for carnival. Hey. Come on and do it. 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 Do it for carnival. Doctors and lawyers.
The passing of Sealy and other Grenadian calypso greats raises the sad reality that Grenada is failing to teach successive generations about the rich talent of local artists who have added to the richness of Grenada's cultural mosaic. There is a serious need, we believe, to develop a cultural studies curriculum different from what social studies offer, so that students can be adequately immersed in all aspects of Grenadian culture. Cultural studies help develop the cultural identity of the individual, which teaches impressionable minds the importance of valuing traditions that binds them together and articulating what it means to be a Grenadian. May Daniel Sealy rest in peace, and may his memory be a blessing. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Sunday edition of the Bubb Report. We're happy that you can join us. Now, at the last rally in St. Andrew, Prime Minister of Grenada, Dr. Keith Mitchell, pretty much telegraphed to the nation that the election will be called very soon, marshalling his troops to get ready for the occasion at which he would ring the bell. And at this moment, I'm happy to be joined by a gentleman who would be responsible for adjudicating the elections process at the various polling divisions across Grenada, Carriacou, and Petite Martinique, and that is Mr. Elvis Moraine, who is the supervisor of elections. Mr. Moraine, welcome to the Bubb Report.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bubb, for having me. Are you hearing me loud and clear?
Absolutely, yes, sir.
Great. And of course, it's my pleasure to be part of your esteemed platform, as well as I think the congratulations will be in order, because I think I have spoken to you based on your achievement professionally and, of course, in academia. So I want to extend my profound gratitude and pleasure for that growth and development I see in a young man that I know from a very, very, very tender age.
Absolutely. The Grenadian public may not know this, but you are one of my teachers at the St. Joseph's RC Pomerose School in Pomerose. So that is something that I always acknowledge. I always acknowledge my teachers at the Great Pomerose School, something that I never forget.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Now, Mr. Moraine, you are here to talk elections. And of course, indicating, as I indicated in the intro, the Prime Minister of Grenada indicated that elections would be called soon, which he has the power to so do. Now, talk to us about the status of the current voters list. Now, I know that the various political parties in Grenada, the two major political parties at least, have been urging their supporters to get registered. And so I would ask you, within the last 3 to 6 months, have you been seeing an uptick in registration?
Dr. Bubb, certainly we have seen an uptick, right? The publication of the last consolidated list, which was effective December 31st, 2021, we had about around 84,000 voters, which represent, of course, an increase, because you'll recall the last election we were around 79, somewhere thereabout. And and I can even speak now, while we go in maybe in a matter of weeks to do the publication of the addendum for the first quarter of 2020, we also see an uptick in terms of persons coming to replace the card as well as new registrants.
Okay, so replacement of cards, new registrants. Now, recent enumeration exercises. Have you been conducting recent? Of course, I'm sure you have been conducting enumeration exercises. How would you assess the effectiveness of your most recent exercises?
Well, the truth be told, Dr. Bubb, we are not doing enumeration, right? The amendment to accommodate the electronic voter system, now what you do is that you do continuous registration. So you have continuous registration that you do throughout any cycle. And of course, what we are faced with as well, as I told you, effective the 3rd of February 2020, we started the replacement of expired card, because prior to that, we know that all persons who were duly registered as of the 31st of January 2020, all these cards were expired. So that is the focus right now that we are into.
Okay. Now talk to us about maintaining the integrity of the voters list in the context of removing duplicate names, for example, and addressing the issue of deceased voters. Is that also a process that continues to be ongoing, checking the list to make sure that it constantly remains updated?
Certainly. It is something that is part of the process that we're doing to keep the list as sterile as possible. I would say to you, though, it's not a simple task. I am encouraged, however, because I think sometimes electors are not aware, or they don't take advantage of the provisions in the Act where we talk claims and objection. Claims and objection is very powerful, a very powerful mechanism in the Act. So now we have seen, especially in the last maybe 6 months, a number of persons, registering objections as well as claims, and that is good. So it helps us to focus ourselves, because if we would just reference at the deaths, for example, we rely, of course, on deaths and birth to give us the number of deaths. And as we go through, there are certain dynamics in this. For instance, if somebody, a Grenadian who died abroad, now remember that death is not registered here. So sometimes when somebody objects, we can then do our investigation, we can have the requisite certification, whether it's a death certificate, to confirm, and then we can move forward. So it's that. We also discovered something that's very interesting. Even in Grenada, deaths are registered based on parish of death, right? And Dr. Bubb, that sometimes somebody's place of, like, for example, registration for electoral purposes, it doesn't always mean that you basically were living there at the time of death. So what we were doing, we were more or less screening the list against parish and constituencies. What we realize now that we have to look at the entire list and the fullness of it, because of that, we see popping all the time in terms of somebody dying in St. John's, but they, of course, resident in St. David. And sometimes it can be easily missed because, you focus on matching the death list for St. David with the constituency. So that is something we have been given, a lot of focus on. And I'm saying that, Dr. Bubb, the claims and the objection in that regard is really helping the process, because with all these eyes on the ground, I think it's useful. And I want to place on record my congratulation and commendation for persons who take that lead, because it's something that we've been calling for a while, for persons to help us in that process, because the Act makes provision for it through the claims and objection.
Have you been noticing an uptick in claims and objections?
Certainly.
Yeah.
Certainly. There have been various, we have persons coming forward and I say it's a very detailed process, Dr. Bubb. It's not a simple process. It's painstaking. So we ask persons to do that as the earliest, don't wait for an election, but do it as early as possible so we can begin to shape, the list in a way that we believe that everybody can be proud of. So we have seen certainly some increase, recently in terms of persons registering their objection, mostly objection, not so much claims. We have very few claims, but objections, relative to persons who have died, persons duplicates on the list, and those sort of things that we've seen happening quite recently.
What about, now that issue was raised in the last election cycle, and the opposition National Democratic Congress accused the ruling New National Party of essentially chartering flights from parts of the diaspora with voters, flights, a plane load of voters, if you will, to come to Grenada to vote. Now, talk to us about the voting rules for Grenadians who are resident abroad. Now, I know that the Electoral Act in Grenada stipulates who can vote, meaning you have to be constantly resident and domiciled in Grenada for a period of time. How are you ensuring or enforcing that particular stipulation to ensure that the people who are in fact voting are domiciled and resident in Grenada as they should be?
All right, good. So, Dr. Bubb, the Act makes provision for a Grenadian. You can reside out of state for 5 years, all right? And after 5 years, of course, and I will speak to that process as well, where we have some challenges. So a Grenadian who has been out of Grenada for above 5 years should be removed from the list, right? For the Commonwealth citizens is a year, okay? So just to address the issue that you raised earlier, for instance, someone can come, a Grenadian can come, right, at any time, you know, so the whole meet about persons about plain load of people coming. Any Grenadian from which part of the diaspora can choose to come back to Grenada to vote. Now, what you have to bear in mind is this. The first measure, you have to be duly registered, meaning that you must be on the voters list because you're a Grenadian. Now, you also have to, if you're not on the list, you can't be participating in the process. So if someone returned to Grenada, right, and especially if they hold a valid, let's suppose they may not be in Grenada for maybe the last few years, but of course they hold a valid, and in that case, well, maybe most of them, the ID might be expired, right? But at the same time, when you have that, you come in and you check the list and you make sure that you're on the list, you are due to register. It doesn't matter which part of the world that Grenadian is. Once you're on the list, you're entitled to participate in the process. To get on the list, you have to be here in person. So for example, no one can stay in the diaspora, wherever you are, and get registered, right? You have to be in person, and you come in, and of course, you would bring your documents, basic documents in terms of the your birth certificate, official birth certificate, or a valid passport in this regard, or for persons who maybe attain the citizenship through and just have the certificate, it can be used as well. So that really is what the crux of the matter is. So you cannot deny anybody. Once that person is duly registered, it doesn't matter whether they just come from the plane or not. Once they're duly registered, that's the most important fact.
Once they're duly registered. So explain to me then that residency requirement.
Good. So the residency requirement, Dr. Bubb, is more or less is tied to the issue of we apply it in terms of Commonwealth citizens because you have to be here. How do we validate that you are here? Because you must, a Commonwealth citizen must be here, residing here for at least a year, right? That's from the time you enter the office to register. So what happens is that person, you can use a birth certificate or you can use your passport of wherever Commonwealth country you belong. What you have to also do is to take an oath, right? There's an oath that you must take. There is a form that we apply to it, and then you have to sign by a GP, right, saying that person is of course virgin for the fact that you have been there for a year, at least a year, to be registered. So that's how the process is.
Okay. All right. Now, some representative of the civil society organizations have raised concerns with respect to conflicts of interests between your office, which is an independent entity, and the government of Grenada. The contention by these civil society organizations is that I believe your website is hosted on government servers. So can you speak to whether or not you actually met with civil society representatives to address that concern?
Yes, I have. We've had some very good meetings, right? As a matter of fact, they had written to me asking about not so much the way it's hosted. I think the issue of they were trying to address the issue of online voters registration, right? Which I dismiss off the bat because we don't do that, right? The website that we have, that the Parliamentary Elections Office has, is hosted basically in the Parliamentary Elections Office, right? Just like the whole system in terms of our database is hosted there. So there's no government interference where that is concerned, right? My last communication, when upon my receipt of my response to the question, that's a written thing. Of course, civil society responded after with, and they show some government portal, right? But I want to say categorically that we are not part of the government portal. The government started a portal sometime, because at the time I was still at the Ministry of Education. I remember that, where they were doing this, putting government services on there. In 2019, when I took up this office of supervisor of election, I inquired as to whether or not, because we ought not to be part of that. And there was no communication as far as I know, and prior to my time, in terms of the Parliamentary Election Office being part of the government portal. What I do understand, however, is that the person who was creating it, what they do, or the group or the company, they put a lot of things on there. And there was a need, because I know we had it from the Ministry of Agriculture. Then you go in to claim. It's like a create a kind of dummy effect, Dr. Bubb. So you had to go in now to verify information and so on. But at no time was the Parliamentary Election Office was part of this construct at all. So I can speak to that categorically. We're never part of that. So we are not part of the platform. We are not, our information is not hosted elsewhere apart from the central office. And that's what I can speak to.
Okay. Now, I know that both political parties, both the New National Party and the National Democratic Congress, recently had a meeting with the Parliamentary Elections Office. I know, for example, that the National Democratic Congress had some concerns with respect to allegations of voter padding in the Northeast constituency. There were also some concerns with respect to the status of voters who live in an area that borders both the Northeast and the town of St. George. Can you talk to us about the issues that were raised in that meeting, the concerns of the parties, and how you were able to address it?
All right. So we had a meeting specific to that issue. As a matter of fact, the office, both political parties expressed concern, right, that potential residents or people who are replacing their cards were turned away and asked to go to another office, right, so there was a boundary issue, right, and that boundary issue surround around what we now call Mount Rush, right. So the office thought it was responsible thing to do to invite both parties to sit for us to have a conversation, right. And I must say, by all indication, it was a very, very good dialogue from both political parties. We were very clear as to what the outcome of the meeting should be. Now, what you observe there, Dr. Bubb, is that at the time of it's not Mount Rush, but the housing scheme, right? I mean, prior to that, when the boundaries and so on, there was no housing scheme there. So the housing scheme is there, and to me, by our investigation, what we discovered is that a lot of the persons who were beneficiaries of the houses were actually from the town of St. George, right? And by so doing, they maintain that whole. Now, after having that very fruitful discussion with both political parties, we realize the only way we can solve that issue is to go into an enumeration process, which we didn't have the luxury of time to do, right? So we agreed, in principle, to let the status quo remain as is for now, right? In both parties, we agree. And then, of course, in due time, we'd have to address it through the Boundaries Commission, would have to again redefine the boundaries, and then we take it from there. So that is where it was a very good meeting. So that meeting specifically with the both parties dealt with that issue. We also had a very fruitful engagement with the National Democratic Congress, but separate and apart from that, right? Out of that meeting, they indicated that they would like to have an engagement with us, and subsequently they wrote to us and underscoring the issues that they would like to discuss. And I must say we were able to ventilate all of the issues. A lot of clarities were sought. Of course, as I said earlier, the issue of how do we make sure that persons are registered where they ought to register, which leads to voter fraud in the wider context, but voter pardon, as most people will say. So we look at that issue, and I think maybe out of that too had spurred some of the claims and objection that persons highlighted. They also highlighted the fact that during the 2018 election, there were some objections that were made, and of course, they weren't satisfied how it was, addressed. So we take upon ourselves to look again at this and see how we go forward in terms of making sure that those issues are addressed. There is, and the conflict comes in terms of the boundary issue, especially where you have populated areas and the boundary is separated, by a road or a river, right? That's how we do it. So sometimes if somebody comes and they do not give a proper description as to where they are at, is like, whether you're above the road or under the road, because sometimes that's what you have to use to determine where that person, which polling division that person or constituency that person should be. So that is done. Now, the beautiful thing about it now is that because of the urgency and the level of interest shown relative to the objection, I think now we are in a better place. Because in case somebody was able to slip through the crack, that would take care of it. So I think that is we on the right track in terms of addressing that issue. They also the issues in terms of the lack of professionalism, or for such of a better word, in terms of when persons go to the office. We address
sometimes
that
the office is closed. I know that there was an issue
we address that
where
as
the
well.
office was closed.
And so all of those issues were ventilated, and I had to plug in there as well when we met with them that, in terms of the attitude, the professional attitude displayed by persons, in other words, to put it colloquially, some of the electors are no saint. So when they come, sometimes, they behave in manners that are not consistent, with what is expected. And people being human being, and I'm not trying to defend the office in any way, but people being human being might react. But of course, we continue to speak to our employees in terms of how they should approach and how. And I must say there have been a lot of improvement where that is concerned, and there was an urgency. And I think also, in all fairness to the political parties, I think they have done a good job recently in terms of also educating the electors as to what are the expectations. So we have less, contention when it comes to the office now, because most time persons go there, and when you ask them for the required documents, because there was a narrative before that where persons were told that all you need to do to replace a card was your old voter's ID, right? And that was not true. So that was a lot of the contention when you go and people feel frustrated. Dr. Bob, people are leaving the workplace and so on to come to do this thing, right? And some of them have to request time off and so on. So you could understand the frustration along the line. But I think we have, I'm not saying we did totally, but I think we have passed, along that part, and we are now looking upward in terms of where that is concerned. Also, to strengthen the fact of the issue of voter padding, in 2018, there was an amendment also which gave currency to you declaring, your place of ordinary residence. And I think that too is working well. So we ask persons, especially persons who are seeking transfer from one constituency to the next, they would have to provide some verification by way of the address. And I think that has been working well. When we started, of course, persons were, another document again, why we have to ask for this document. But I think now we're in a place where persons understand the value of this, right? And I think also the political parties are also helping by letting people know in the outreach that, look, you need to do those things. So I think it is cushioned and it's a lot more accommodating now than before.
Mm-hmm. Now, going back to the issue in Montrush, you said that the status quo would remain. Can you elaborate on what you mean by the status quo would remain? Right. So, first of all, is Montrush divided into the constituency of the town of St. George and St. George's Northeast? Is that what it is? Or can you explain what
and that, Dr. Bode, is a shade of gray. Right. In terms of that is one of these two constituencies basically bordering where you don't have a clear path with some members of a road. Mm-hmm. We discovered that, a true road there, if you understand that. So we discovered that. And I'm saying so traditionally the persons in the Montrush settlement, I think that's where the issue is. That is the crux of the matter in the housing scheme, as we call it. Mm-hmm. They were predominantly from the town, right? So at the time of moving, they already registered that, right? So they know themselves to be town people, if you want to say that, right? So we decided, okay, while this is not very clear with that is in terms of the boundary establishment, it is prudent for us to say, you know what? These persons were registered in the town of George. Let us continue with that until we get to having the activation of the Boundaries Commission who can duly address the issue. That may, not that most likely would result in some sort of enumeration, at the constituency level, or whether we look wider, during the both constituency. But it's something that we thought, and both parties agreed, let us allow this to happen, in terms
So
of adding.
what I'm hearing you say is that the election would proceed with the current status quo in place, but following the election, the boundaries, people will be taking care of that aspect of it.
Of course, because Dr. Bob, we left in, okay, we came into the meeting actually with persons not to show, not to clear. I myself weren't very clear as to, okay, where and what, and discovering also that Mount Rush, is sometimes is a concept we just called, but I learned then that Mount Rush would be the road and a lot of that. So then there were a lot of shades of gray, which didn't give us the sufficiency of time to address that issue, because if we had to go into an enumeration process for the both constituency, you know what that's going to be. So we decided, based on consensus, let us agree to continue in that manner, right? And then this will duly be addressed after, when we have, the luxury of time to do so.
Okay. Now, two final questions, but there's a follow-up question that I have concerning concerns of voter padding that the National Democratic Congress addressed. In fact, the former political leader, on his appearance last week on the Bubb Report, expressed the view that you did have voters also in the Northeast constituency, but voters who voted in the Northeast constituency, the allegation was, actually came from the St. George's Northwest constituency. So I think the question I have for you is, how do you ensure that electors who traditionally belong to one constituency are not crossing over to give that appearance or to make it appear as if voter padding is in fact happening?
All right. So I kind of alluded to that earlier. So
Yeah.
what we are doing now, as I said, is persons, we are clear as to where persons at. We have to, and as I said, there have been a lot of scrutiny relative to that list and in these polling divisions, right? So we are getting a lot of help from the public in asserting, what is happening there. Or, okay, this person is not there. That person has not been in that constituency, ordinary resident. So then we move from that. So that has been very helpful in this regard. But also, as I said, we also enforce the amendment of 2018, which are now asking persons to, of course, provide proof of ordinary resident if you're moving, especially if you are moving from one constituency to the next. You would have to provide some proof before we could activate that. So, and I said we have been doing this. It's something that has been working well for us. And of course, when I look at anybody who's seeking a transfer, once I'm not satisfied that you provide the requisite information to effect that transfer, I would not approve it.
Okay. Now, the final two questions. How is the Parliamentary Elections Office going to ensure accessibility for the differently abled population? Issues of privacy when persons of the differently abled community go to vote. What measures would be in place to ensure that their privacy is secured, that group of people?
All right, so that is one for the long haul. Presently, what we have is that persons that they are aided, somebody they carry somebody with them, take an oath, and they proceed. So we've had many persons expressing those concerns relative to us being able to have them assert that level of privacy. We are not at that place as we speak, right? It takes a lot for us to do that. We are, but of course, we are amiable to looking forward to addressing that issue. It's something that has to be addressed. It's something that has to address in the wider reform of our process. But it's something that would take, from my search of it, in terms of trying to find out from even some of the islands within our jurisdiction, the Caribbean, as to who, and not many persons. Well, a matter of fact, I didn't come across anybody. I'm not saying nobody is not doing it, but the people I spoke to, no one is actually, doing that in terms of having the privacy ascribed. And I'm not saying it doesn't happen. I'm saying that for us, the person I spoke to, they have not been any, such practice. So it's something that we have to look at. It's something that we believe would help us in terms of going forward. While they might be differently able, at the end of the day, these persons are very independent in their thoughts. They are people who can contribute in a meaningful way to society, and I think is also deserving of them to have such privacy. So it's something that we are looking at in the wider context. as to how best to implement that, in the future.
Okay. And finally, on recent media appearances, representative of your elections office inferred that there might be some amendments to the Representation of the People's Act. What is the thinking behind such amendments that needs to be made, and what sections might be amended?
You're putting me on the spot there, man. The thing is, what I could say certainly, Dr. Bubb, there would be something around the expired card, because the act as we speak is silent on expired card. So I could speak to that. And let me also say we're having an engagement with the wider stakeholder grouping in terms of the political parties, civil society, conference of churches, and so on. So next week, Thursday, we have it scheduled for next Thursday. So we've been having that engagement with the different groupings, and we'll be chatting the course. In that engagement would also be people and persons from the legal department to chat as to what are some of the things that we're looking forward in terms of the whatever amendments there would be to the act in this regard. But I could tell you, certainly there will be something around the expired cards.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Moraine, thank you so much for appearing on the Bubb Report. We would certainly like to have you back on the program.
But Dr. Bubb, before you go on, I just want
engagement. Yes, go ahead, please.
I want to make that picture for this one. And I think it's important. We prior to all elections we had before, after we move into the electronic voter system, persons were not allowed to present a card as much as the act makes provision for that. I want to let people know that, we expect to enforce that fully. Persons would have to present a card. So your first line is to make sure you're on the list, and you will be asked to present your card, right? And that is why we're encouraging persons to have the card replaced, to avoid unnecessary delays on election day, to have the cards replaced, right? And we ask us to keep it in safekeeping, and notice, I want to put a note here. We're not saying that the persons cannot vote if you don't have the card. Notice the caption here, to avoid unnecessary delays. Because if you do not have your card, you will be likely have to there will be a verification process, but you would have to take an oath, right? So it means that it delays the process significantly in terms of casting your ballot on that day. So we're asking persons to keep their cards in safekeeping, as well as to have the cards replaced. By tomorrow or sometime, the week is almost finished, we will be sending out a public notice encouraging persons to do that, to have the cards replaced, to avoid that kind of level of delays. Because it was not a practice, Dr. Bubb, despite the act makes provision for it, persons weren't allowed or asked to bring it in. I think, for example, I can speak to myself. I've always been, because with my card, however, I was never asked. And it is critical that we make this point as well, because one of the things coming out of the meeting with the NDC, they also make the pitch relative to persons, people who they believe that people, have voted in terms of I just say on dead people's name, right? People come and vote on those people's name. So that is one of the measures, of course, that we know going to help us in minimizing that kind of concern that have been leveled in the public. So we asking persons to, of course, get the card replaced, right? And also even for persons in the diaspora, if you intend to come back to vote and you have an expired card, we ask you to come in, to maybe make a trip, Dr. Bubb, have your card replaced, so you would avoid that kind of level of delays on the day. But I'm saying is that I don't want to be misconstrued to believe that if you don't have your card, you can't vote, because some people are saying that, and that is not true. Remember, constitutionally, your first line to vote, it means that you must be duly registered, right? So if you do not have a card on the day, and it happens, Dr. Bubb, that some people may not have a card. And let me tell you why. Because with the influx of persons and the replacement of cards, let's suppose when the writ is issued, remember there's no more replacement of card, no more registration. The process ceases. So all you do now is processing, of course, the people who are duly registered. You don't want to have a situation where persons. So you would have persons, in other words, that may not administratively have a card processed. You understand what I'm saying? So if you look at the Act, you will realize that there was always that provision for persons taking an oath, right? If you do not have your card. So we're just encouraging people to work with us on that. Dr. Bubb, we're encouraging, you as well, to use the platform to sensitize persons that, okay, look, we want to make sure that this process happens, and all of us at the end of the day can be proud for it, And I said it is the role of everyone, wherever you sit, whether it's in the diaspora, whether you're actively involved in the political process, to help to make that list as transparent as possible. And I'm saying to look at it. When the list is published, in a matter of about a week and a half, we would have the notice out to publish the addendum for the first quarter of this year. And of course, we ask persons to go through it with a fine-tooth comb. And of course, feel free to communicate with us whatever irregularities that you cite there, so we can address it. So at the end of the day, we don't want to have this conversation about us having voter pardon and election fraud issues, when all of us have a responsibility to make sure that the process is as transparent as possible.
Okay. All right, Mr. Moraine, I call you Teacher Elvis.
That's okay.
I still call you Teacher Elvis. You are my teacher. Once a teacher, always a teacher. So, Mr. Moraine of the Parliamentary Elections Office, thank you for appearing on the Bubb Report. As I was saying before we go to the break, we will be inviting you back because we believe education around elections, the process of voting, what you need to carry, the rules with respect to how you line up on election day, what you should be wearing, things like that. All of those things are important and integral to the democratic process. So we will be inviting you and your team back at the Parliamentary Elections Office. So thank you for appearing on the report.
And I look forward to that, because I know when you do these programs, you want to make sure because the audience do have questions and you want to be able to answer them.
Yes, absolutely. Mr. Moraine, thank you again.
You're welcome, Dr. Bubb. And all the best.
Absolutely. Viewers and listeners, we will take a quick break and we will come back with our panel segment of the day. Please stand by.
The color, the design, the experience. Oro is here.
We have a truck on the road. We have a truck on the road.
Why would we have ambassadors representing the state that do not understand clearly what their terms of reference are?
These are the cards that I have drawn, that I am the minister at this point in time. And for members of the public...
But you're also a servant of the people. The unions are not threatening to withdraw their labor, and neither are they threatening to shut the country down, as you did.
I think your summarization of my position is highly inaccurate, and may I dare say a bit inflammatory.
The strategy did not work the last time for you. So what would make this?
Well, you're assuming that we're doing the same strategy.
The future of this country hangs in the balance come March 13th. The decision you make will determine what happens, whether we continue along the road to progress, prosperity, stability, or whether we go back to the years of turmoil and chaos.
Voters had a chance to try again during the March election, but those fearing indecisive government often opt for a single strong leader. But Grenadians have had their fill of that too. Among the new parties and offshoots of old ones was one that was familiar. It was thought and feared that the Grenada United Labour Party could be returned to power. Led by a blind and eccentric former dictator, Sir Eric Gairy, the party was amongst the most popular, despite Sir Eric's reported obsession with flying saucers. Yet at the polls, there was no clear victor, and the country was thrown into a state of uncertainty. There's talk now of forming a coalition government and attempting to rescue Grenada again, to try and save it from slipping into the kind of obscurity suffered by its Caribbean neighbors. It now appears the barrier to a grand four-party coalition is not politics, but personal dislikes. Grenada has several would-be leaders, but voters have given the crown to none, and it's hard to imagine things changing in the future.
And welcome back, folks, to the second segment of the Bubb Report. As a reminder, the second segment of the program is brought to you compliments S.A. Johnson Funeral Home, a Caribbean family-owned funeral service. They offer a full range of funeral services at affordable prices in New York City. S.A. Johnson Funeral Home, because you deserve to be treated with dignity. And at this time, I wish to welcome our panel segment of the week. I have here two former politicians of two different sides of the political aisle. We have Mr. Michael Batiste, who represents the Grenada United Labour Party. He was also a former Minister of Agriculture in the New National Party, as well as a Member of Parliament for the St. Andrew Southwest constituency, as well as Mr. Kenny Lal Singh, who was a former government minister under the opposition National Democratic Congress, himself representing a West constituency. This time, though, it's the St. Patrick West constituency, two rural constituencies. And Mr. Lal Singh, we want to sincerely and publicly thank you for appearing on the program on such short notice. You've now becoming a friend of the program, a reliable friend of the program. So we want to thank you for appearing here, sir. And our final guest is Miss Cassandra Mitchell. Miss Cassandra Mitchell, who is representing, and probably she's here in her own personal capacity, but she is also an active member of the civil society organization grouping in Grenada. And folks, panel, the reason why we've decided to assemble you here is because we wanted to have a conversation about really what is the opening salvo of the Grenadian elections. And I will throw out this first question to all of you, and whoever wants to go with it, you can go with it first. What do you think is the significance of the fact that the Prime Minister telegraphed to the nation that elections will be called soon, that he did so on what is traditionally an Nnp stronghold in the St. Andrew Northeast constituency? Any one of you can go first. Mr. Batiste, perhaps you can start as someone who represented one of the St. Andrew constituencies.
Well, thank you so much, my brother, Dr. Kellen Bubb. I just want a little correction. You said Michael Batiste and Kenny Lal Singh are former politicians. I'm still a politician.
Okay.
I can't speak for Kenny. Kenny will speak for himself.
Okay, fair enough.
Before I even make my observations on the present situation, I listened to the supervisor of election, Brother Elvis Marine, and I was a little taken aback with some of the things that he said. He said, one, he had some problems with, in the case of people who are Grenadian voter who may have died overseas, and he had a problem in certifying that. You know, regretfully, he's off the program. I don't know if he's off the program or if he's listening, but in 1993, a matter was brought before the courts. It was the two litigants were Michael Batiste and Selwyn Mitchell on behalf of the Grenada United Labour Party. And in that matter, we claimed that the voters list needed to be sanitized because there were more people on the voters list than the population of Grenada. And hearing the supervisor of elections saying today that he has a problem, I suppose, in deleting that name from the list, someone who may have died overseas. Regrettably, he's not on the program to offer some kind of clarification on that. Because our matter went to the courts, the matter was heard. The judge at the time said he would give his decision shortly. And you know, myself and Brother Selwyn Mitchell, I think maybe we made history. We are the only one who went to the High Court. The matter was heard and we never got a decision up to this day. And how do we get
that is something, Mr. Batista, I'm going to follow up on. I was not aware of this. If I was, that is some research that I will be following up on.
Let me help you.
That's a question that he needs to answer.
The state, such an important matter. The supervisor of elections then was Mr. Victor Ashby. And Mr. Victor Ashby told the courts that the supervisor of elections does not have any authority to remove any names from the list except through an act of parliament or the courts. And hence the reason why we brought the matter before the courts, because we wanted to give the supervisor of elections the power to sanitize the list. So regrettable that he's not here. And it's been years. We had the matter we went to the court. The judge heard the matter and hurriedly said he would come with a decision soon. And what is so alarming is that the judge have now left the jurisdiction. He's now, we have taken up position in another jurisdiction. And as of now, we have yet to hear that decision because the word domicile was somewhere installed in the voters in the registry.
The representation of the People's Act.
Right. And he talked about people in the diaspora, but I did not hear the word domicile, and I wanted to ask him.
Yes, and that is why I posed the question, because I think that is a gray area, right? And how is that enforced?
It's not gray, it's black. It's red and black, because he talked about people in the diaspora having to renew their cards. But there's this word that was installed there, and you have to help me, I'm not an academician, but I remember the word domicile.
Domicile, I remember that as well.
Domicile resident.
In my reading of the issue.
What is he saying? That 5 plane loads of Grenadian nationals who have not been to Grenada in the last 5 years can be sent upon Falls Airport 4 or 5 days before the elections, go into the registration office and register to vote and participate in elections. I don't know. I wanted to ask him some things on that, but it's unfortunate. But he said he has something, a meeting for stakeholders on Thursday, and I will see if I can get a hold of Selwyn Mitchell in St. John's, and maybe Selwyn Mitchell and myself can maybe descend it upon that meeting so that we could have these questions answered. Because as of today, we brought a matter to the court because we're saying that the supervisor of election must be given the authority to sanitize the list.
Yeah.
And based on the People's Representation Act, only the courts or Parliament can install such a privilege on him. So that's something that I think needs ventilation, because incidentally, we had that matter in '93. In election, not '93, in 2003, I'm sorry. We had election in 2004, and in Carriacou, there were questions about 7 people voting, that there were questions about their eligibility to vote. So maybe through you, in your next meeting with him, you may want to raise this pertinent issues that that calls for clarification?
Absolutely. It is something, and I'm glad you raised it, and that is something we would be adding to our agenda when we have a follow-up conversation
Because
with the
we
Parliamentary
need to
Elections
know
Office, because
who
I
is
think that is an
eligible to
important
vote. Who is
question.
eligible to
Yes.
vote? We need to know that. Who is eligible to vote? I mean, we are Grenadians, but most of us are not residents of Grenada. And so that there must be some clarification, because over the last few years, and folks in the diaspora, you have all the rights to come and participate in the process in your homeland. But I'm saying it's unfair to the Grenadians at home to see 5 plane loads of people coming into Grenada, registering in constituency where they have no known address. They are not domicile residents. They have not been in that constituency maybe until the last general elections. And here they are now presenting themselves to vote, to make decisions for you, affecting you, that would not affect them in any way, because after the elections, they jump on the big bird and they're gone. And I think we need to know that. We need to clarify that.
Absolutely. So to the question, and Mr. Batiste, by the way, let me extend my personal condolences to you on the passing of your daughter. My deepest sympathies on behalf of the
Thank
team
you so
here of the
much.
Bubb Report.
Thank you so much. She was my everything, my angel, but you know, I'm comforted by the fact that the Lord give it and then he take it away. So I'm not gonna question his decision to call home my daughter at such an early age, but that's how it is.
Okay, so let us talk about the rally in St. Andrew. Both parties, as I said, they held dueling rallies in St. Andrew. Do you think there was some significance behind the Prime Minister telegraphing his decision to have the election soon in that bastion Nnp St. Andrew Northeast constituency?
Well, it's not just in the bastion in St. Andrews Northeast. I think by and large the Prime Minister is kind of cocky. He's feeling confident. Confident because the opposition has not rattled him in any way. They have not actually put forth on the table, and you know, Kenny is a veteran politician. They have not put forth on the table 3 significant issues that affect the lives of people. One, the high cost of living. 2, the war in Ukraine and the effect it has on us as small island states, because of course, in terms of grain and both animal and human feed, high cost of energy and basic commodities, freight. You know, since the pandemic, freight has skyrocketed 500%. And that freight is passed along to the general consumer. I'm not hearing anything about it. I'm not hearing that these issues discussing in a serious way. And then we have an albatross hanging over our heads. The question of the court, 2 court decisions. One, affecting WRB, which no one wants to discuss. And 2, the court order, the court decision relating to pensions, public pensions. And lying in the wing is the soon to be filed suit on behalf of thousands and thousands of road workers, estate workers, those that we call travel, those daily paid public workers, whose pension was also disqualified by the Morris Bishop regime. And over the years, these people have never received a pension. 1990, I think the first government, the NDC, gave them $50 stipend, and then the NDC played political football with it, up the ante a little bit. So those are critical issues that have to be discussed, because it reflects on the public purse. At a time when we were coming out of a pandemic, high cost of living, low productivity, we're not hearing these issues discussed at all, and I am a little concerned You know, it's like cricket. If you're not putting the ball on the wicket and you're not forcing the batsman to play at the ball, he's just putting his bat over his head and go about his merry way. So I think they want us upon the opposition to be on the offensive, not trying not to lose or try not to get another 50-0. But you have to take the fight to the government. You have to represent the people. There are burning issues, and this election now is loaded with issues for ventilation. But unfortunately, I'm not hearing these issues ventilated. So I'll stop there for a while.
Okay, Mr. Lal Singh, your thoughts, your reaction to the dueling, the Big Four, as NDC called it, and the NNP having their motorcade to launch two of their female candidates for both the Northeast and the Northwest constituencies. Your reaction, sir?
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Bob, for having me on the program. And I want to agree with Mr. Baptiste. We may not be active politicians, frontline politician, but you know, once you are a politician, you're always a politician, because we understand politics. We have the experience when it comes to politics, and this is the problem with the politician of today. Allowing Dr. Mitchell to really and truly railroad them, because he has the experience, he's in power. He has the experience, he has the power. Are you hearing me?
Yes, go ahead, sir.
He has the experience, he has the power at his hands, and so he can do anything he wants. And I want to agree with Michael. The issues are not being spoken about. There's so many issues in almost every area that we need to deal with. Sometimes I deal with them on Facebook, and I ask the government, why can't you put a fixed rate for another year, freight rate for another year, previous to what you had maybe 2 years ago, so that the cost of living will go down? Instead of that, the government is reaping havoc on the people. There are so many issues: education, productivity. We can go on and on with so many issues. Unfortunately, the opposition doesn't have a clue what to do. Now, it is quite true to say that NNP and NDC has about the same amount of loyal supporters. But this does not help you win an election. You win an election based on your policy, the issues you articulate, and what you will do for the country. And if you do it right, you can get the swing voters to vote for you. I am afraid that what I'm hearing doesn't really help them. So Dr. Mitchell will probably take advantage of them. He can call the election in May, and NDC will not be ready. Dr. Mitchell can also drag the election to the end of June and burn them out. So basically, Dr. Mitchell is in the driver's seat. And it's so unfortunate to Grenada and Grenadians that you do not have an alternative choice that clearly understand management, politicking, how to move the country forward. Because you don't become a politician overnight. You don't become a doctor overnight. You don't become a good lawyer overnight. But the new boys on the block who have taken over the NDC, they have no experience. And
But Mr. Lal Singh, the counter argument would be then, how then do you get experience, right? You get experience by getting into the foray of politics and getting into the foray of public service.
Dr. Bob, by merging the experience with the youth. You have to merge the people who have some level of experience with the young people coming in. And if you don't merge it, then the young ones will not learn from the older ones, or the ones who have had the experience who have had the exposure. But when you come in with a new team, that team has never been there before. You think you can run a country without any experience whatsoever? They will make rings around you. And so I agree. You got to get in to get experience. But you cannot get it by yourself and believe you could do it just like that. You need good, long-term people who have been there before to help you.
All right, Cassandra, and the same question, but I would reframe it a little bit. In terms of the issues, now I saw both rallies. I didn't see both rallies live, but I did have an opportunity to watch both rallies and look at the speeches of the different leaders. What I saw with what I saw with the National Democratic Congress was an attempt made to address some of the issues, at least not all of the issues that, for example, the two panelists raised here. A lot of conversation was had by the political leader with respect to pensions and pension restoration. A lot of conversation in his address addressed issues of the agricultural sector to the extent that it went far enough. I think that is an open question there. The New National Party also addressed the experience question. But what I saw there with both parties was that you did have some movelang on the Nnp side of the fence, whereas with the NDC, I did not see that. But what say you with respect to the issues? Do you feel that both parties in the opening salvo of this election cycle really made the case for why the Grenadian voters should re-elect them in one case and give confidence to another party in the other case?
No, the thing has just started, according to the Prime Minister and other people. So it is just the beginning of the elections campaign. So I think that there is much more to be heard from both major political parties. I will tend to agree with Mr. Lassing in that I would love to hear more about issues being addressed by the main opposition entity, and not just issues, but policies, because I've said this over and over. When you're talking about reducing youth unemployment and making agriculture better, you need to address, especially for the voting populace like me, the electorate like me, and others like me, how are you going to do that? What policies are you going to change? What is your current policy position on these issues? And we are not hearing it. Lives and livelihoods have been affected by the pandemic. I haven't heard the main opposition entity emphasize much on that and how they're going to change it. We now have the issues of the pension ruling with already high national debt, and this figure, which is unknown to us at the moment, added to the national debt. How are you going to address it? I heard the political leader of the main opposition entity stating that they're going to fix the pension issue. The pension issue doesn't need to be fixed. The court has already ruled. What needs to be discussed is how this ruling, how this money is going to be paid. I also heard him in Pekong say the same way you get the money to buy back WRB, you can get it to pay pension and start paying pension. I don't think that that is a fair statement, because it is important to note that whatever monies that the government of Grenada took to pay the exit judgment would have come from taxpayers, whether it be loans, grants from friendly countries that they would have moved around in the budget. At the end of the day, it is still the pockets of the taxpayers that were affected. So when you make that statement, you're making that statement to the people of Grenada, to the taxpayers of Grenada. So I don't support that statement. Again, like the two other panelists, I would love to hear emphasis on issues that are affecting Grenadians, and not just Pekong. I think while it is fun and we enjoy the laughter, I think serious emphasis needs to be focused on issues moving forward.
But do you think that the ruling administration at their rally really addressed the issues in the way that you wanted the opposition to address the issues as well? Or do you feel as if these conversations are sort of being watered down to sort of sloganeering?
Yes, by both political parties. I, just like you, I took the time to listen to both rallies, if you want to call it that. And I do believe that a lot more emphasis should be placed on issues. and especially by the ruling party who's asking to be kept in office. Why should we keep you in office? We need to hear, more serious conversations around issues affecting Grenadians. I was rather surprised, if I may, to to see that Minister Thomas was endorsed again. And not that she is not doing a good job. I don't think it is my position to say that. But hearing and understanding that she, from people very close to her, that she had no intention of running or contesting another election. But I guess maybe if the process was fair and democratic, you can say that the constituents spoke and she decided to listen to her constituents. One of the things I want to highlight from the Nnp rally, if I may use that phrase to describe it, the launch, is the fact that Minister Thomas's daughter, and I think that really skipped over a lot of people's head, made a plea, almost a cry, saying that she needs her mother. I want to highlight that because many times in our discussions around women in politics, we tend to forget the sacrifices that women and mothers in politics tend to make. And I want to say from that perspective, to the women who are in politics, to the mothers who are in politics, thank you. Because I listened to that young lady and I was moved. It is a sacrifice. So I had to insert that here.
Absolutely. You talk about sacrifice by politicians and, getting involved in public service. You give up, and I'm sure Mr. Batiste and Mr. Lal Singh can relate there. But let's get to the candidates, the quality of candidate selection. And Mr. Batiste, I would want to start with you as well as Mr. Lal Singh. Both of you were in fact candidates yourselves. But talk about the NDC 4 candidates that were selected as a contrast to the NNP 4 candidates that would be the incumbents. How do you see that matchup playing out in those 4 constituencies? Mr. Batiste, you are embedded in Southwest St. Andrews, so you have an intimate understanding of that parish in general more than anybody else. So I would want to begin with you.
I pray that you wouldn't ask me that question. But you did, and
I'm sure there is no question that you can't handle, sir.
No, being the person that I am, I'm obliged to answer. I think the NDC could have done better selection for the people of St. Andrews. They have presented 4 people, very well educated, and let me add that education is not a requirement for getting elected. I think they have basically surrendered the 4 seats in St. Andrews. Neither of the candidates are dominant personalities with strong ties on the ground that people can relate to. I think they're relatively newcomers. People knew very little of them, or if they do know of them, it's not in the kind of way that that is exciting. They're bright. All of them was involved in education, but I don't know how much they have been involved in the lives of everyday people. Now, my brother here, Kenny Lal Singh, he has won the St. Patrick's West constituencies on several occasions, and he won that convincingly because of his ties to ordinary people, his openness, his friendliness. He's a people's person. He's a go-to person, always there for the people. Grenada politics have not changed. Nothing in Grenada politics have changed. Politics is a popularity contest, and you can't come with 4 people who are relatively unknown to the general public, the voting population, and expect to unseat.
Well, but Mr. Batiste, I would push back there. I don't think the Gloria Thomas is relatively unknown. Neither is Tessa Sincere.
Well, very nicely.
They're not relatively unknown, are they?
Well, in terms of very nice lady, but in terms of being on the ground and participating in the day-to-day lives of people and a fixture and a household name in the minds of a lot of people. They have work to do. Let's put it this way. They have a lot of work to do. They have a lot of catching up to do. St. Andrews Southwest, I think that is one of the weakest constituency in St. Andrews, and I think they have surrendered. I mean, I don't
weakest constituencies for which party? The NNP?
The NNP.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's constituencies are for grabs, but I'm not so sure that the candidate there has the ability to take that seat. I'm being honest. I mean, you ask a question, and I'm giving you my honest opinion.
And we do admire that honest opinion.
Candidate in the St. Andrews Southeast, a very nice gentleman, but relatively unknown. In Northeast St. Andrews, a very fine lady, but in terms of day-to-day interaction with people, I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure that they have the ability to wrestle that seats from the incumbent. I'm saddened by the selection of these four candidates. I don't feel they do much justice.
Mr. Lalsing, over to you. Your thoughts on the candidate selection. And I see you smiling here.
I have to agree with Mr. Baptiste that the strategy deployed by the NDC really and truly is not what you want at this time if you want to win the election. I believe that the whole lack of political understanding and experience have put them in a position that they really cannot call the shots at the moment. The candidates are not the very best.
Right.
You know, somebody might be known, but getting to be known politically is a different matter. You were saying something.
Yeah, no, but the question here is, do you believe that there is an argument to be made about novelty, that the voters would be interested in just having these new, fresh faces that represents a break with the old order in the St. Andrews constituencies?
Don't take voters for granted. Voters look for popular, caring candidates. You know, I've been able to win my seat as an NNP, and the next election win it as an NDC. Even if the NDC did not do well, I won my seat. You have to be seen by the voter as caring, capable, and can do something to help the country and its people. And unfortunately, what I see of the NDC, and I want to agree with Michael Baptiste, they're sort of handing over back to the NNP. Now, I believe that Dr. Mitchell is getting tired. He's actually giving away the government, but there's nobody inside the government willing to take it, and there's nobody outside willing to take it.
You are assuming that it's about willingness and not about his ability to give it to them. You're saying that he's you really think this is going to be Dr. Mitchell's last election? I'm not convinced that it will be, Mr. Lalsing. But Cassandra, yeah, go ahead.
Well, just one quick point. I'm not saying that he's voluntarily giving it away, you know, but his behavior is as such that a smart, capable leader and party can take the government from him. That's the point I'm making.
Cassandra, your view on this, the same question, candidate selection. Do you agree with these two former parliamentarians here with respect to what their assessment of the NDC candidates?
Well, I keep hearing the word inexperience thrown around a lot. And while, yes, that may be a contributing factor, one of the things that concerns me as an elector is whether or not the individuals are actually grounded in issues. So yes, you may not be politically experienced, but are you grounded in issues that are affecting the constituents in the constituency where you want to contest? Are you familiar? Are you politically astute with what is happening? Are you familiar with what is going on, the social issues nationally, regionally, internationally, and how they may affect our country? I think, yes, while experience is a factor, Whether or not you're grounded in issues is also another. I don't necessarily agree with the assessment of the 4 NDC candidates. I kind of like the gender balance that was presented. I was rather impressed with David Andrew. I think that's his name. I was rather impressed with him and his presentation. I listened to them, and I like the fact that a few of the candidates, although new, try to focus and key in on their constituency, which is important because that's the constituency where you're going to be representing, where you're going to be the MP. So yes, as I said, experience is a factor, but again, if you're grounded in issues, is also another one that, and as you mentioned, we talk about novices, political novices, but I think that there's curiosity by electors as to who are these individuals, what are they willing to offer. One thing I've noticed, though, and I'm paying very close attention to this, is that Prime Minister Mitchell doesn't seem rattled by the NDC, contrary to what many in the public are saying. I don't think he's rattled at all. I'm hearing individuals, mostly affiliated to the main opposition entity, giving credit to the new leader of the NDC for a lot of the projects that are happening now. I don't agree, and let me say why. Because I've been involved in the consultative process, I can tell you, and I can speak openly and say that a lot of the projects that were carded to be implemented in 2019, 2020, 2021, because of the pandemic, they were delayed. And a lot of the donor agencies and some of the friendly countries who would have given money to the state of Grenada are now asking for delivery of the projects. And we have already signed and sealed some of these MOUs and contracts. So we have to deliver on our promises. And I'm saying because it is the state of Grenada, not the political administration. So that is one of the reasons why I know a lot of the projects have been implemented, and we've seen it around that. And of course, I hear the argument that Prime Minister Mitchell has a modus operandi of doing a lot of infrastructural work and projects coming close to an election period. That may be so, but what I've also indicated is a contributing factor to what we see happening in 2022.
Mm-hmm. Now let us talk about the 4 incumbent candidates, Cassandra, as you're on that subject there. The 4 incumbent candidates for the St. Andrew constituency of the New National Party, assessing them, because I think elections, yes, are about all of the candidates, but it is also a referendum on the performance of the candidates who are currently representing those constituencies. Any thoughts on that? And I will throw that question out to Mr. Batiste and Mr. Lal Singh as well. Cassandra, I will start with you.
Yes, I think looking back as an elector, one of the things that we have to take into consideration, I think the pandemic should be a contributing factor in us analyzing the performance of the current administration. Obviously, looking back to prior years, but looking at how they managed the pandemic. We are, outside of Grenada, if you look at some of the influencing factors, the war in Ukraine, the possible inflation of food prices, the effects that this war is going to have on agriculture, food security, and all of the other things, we have to, when we're looking at making a decision come the next elections, really think about who are we going to place in the driver's seat. Has our representative, and I'm keen on representative, because when we go to the polling station, we are voting for a representative, obviously, who will now make up government. But has our representative been in a community? How have they dealt with us as constituents? Do we want to give them another term? So there are a lot of contributing factors. Are we going to place the management of our country into the hands of people with little experience? Because that's the fact. They have absolutely no experience in managing a country in such a crucial period. Are we going to leave the incumbent there in the I guess in the presence of our representative in Parliament to make decisions on our behalf? And I'm really worried that as electors, that this is going to be a very, very crucial election. We have to really think about our future, the future of our children. And frankly, sometimes when I think about the upcoming elections, I get anxiety. But we really have to.
Why do you get anxiety, Cassandra?
Yes, because we're looking at the incumbent, we're looking at the main opposition entity, and many times you're looking at what they're offering. And like the two other panelists said, a lot of the times you get the impression that no, they are not going hard at the main opposition, at the ruling party. They are not presenting policy positions. They're not talking about real issues. Yes, we understand, like I said earlier, the pick on, we have fun, we laugh, we dance. But when it comes to the future of our country, we really like to see serious people take control of our country and move
But
our country forward.
I think the political leader of the NDC would say that he's a serious person, and that was one of the reasons why he decided to come forward to offer. He could have, Deacon Mitchell, I'm sure, could have stayed in his nice, cushy corporate lawyer job, not wanting to come forward. But the argument can be made that, look, he decided to step off the sidelines and come forward.
But one of the concerns that I have, and I'm going to speak because I'm in the constituency where he's contesting, what has he done for St. Davians? What he has absolutely no public footprint. And I know people get offended when I say this, but when I look back on him, while yes, he is a successful young lawyer, and we applaud him if you take into consideration all of the factors and where men are. I think that he is a successful young man that has to be applauded for some of the professional decisions that he made and the fact that he is successful. Where is his public footprint? And by his own admission, he has never been involved in any social charitable organization. So why now? What have you contributed to St. David, and what are you going to contribute? I really haven't heard it. Even in the launch over the weekend, while I heard him, if I may use for lack of a better word at the moment, boasting about his professional accomplishment, having studied in the Caribbean and making people about having him only having a Grenadian passport. But there was no mention of contribution to St. David or to any other social activity. So where's your public footprint? So yes, he's a successful lawyer, but what has he contributed to the constituency where he's contesting? And then the other thing is, if you look at his professional past, it brings up a lot of other questions. I'm involved in civil society and advocacy in Grenada, and he can be perceived to be anti-worker based on his professional past. So did you become successful on the backs of the working class people in Grenada?
Okay, Mr. Larsing, say the four Nnp candidates in the St. Andrew constituency, if you were to rate their performance on a scale of 1 to 10, Emmeline Pay, Yolan Bain, Delma Thomas, and Kate Lewis, how would you rate their performance over the last?
Before I answer the question and rate them, I want to agree with Cassandra Mitchell. Her assessment that she just put forward, really the political leader of the NDC. I think she was very much on point with how she have seen him, what he has been and what he is at this time. Now, to rate the MPs in the St. Andrews area, I believe all of them have tried, have followed, and I could see in the constituency, they all have tried their very best to do the small constituency projects. And again, as a politician, these are the things that matters very much to the people in the villages, because they're the ones who vote you to go into parliament, to probably become a minister. And so you must always look after the well-being of your constituents. So they all have tried. But
some might say they're looking forward. Some might say, Mr. Larsing, that they're looking forward to the well-being of their supporters only. You've heard that hue and cry from some in Grenada that the hyper partisanship is such that if you do not pledge loyalty to one side, the NNP, then whatever benefits are supposed to be for everyone tends to only go to those who carry that party loyalty. Your thoughts?
Well, yes, some politicians go overboard with what you have just said. Mm-hmm. Obviously, they would look after the people closest to them. But of course, if they do a road in a village, everybody benefits from that road. If they do other things, they will benefit. But it is quite obvious that the people closer to you will get the greater benefit. Nevertheless, once as an MP, you are doing something to make people's lives better, even if it's the people close to you, or even if they are the people that you want to win over, all that goes to your credit. So you will never get it right. I mean, I have been there. I've done a lot of things. I've done things for people who didn't like me. But of course, not a lot of people are brave to do it. But to go back in terms of grading them, I like Delma Thomas's approach. I believe she probably have been the best the best parliamentary representative in probably the entire government. She gets down on the ground, she's there with the people, and she's always doing a project here and there. So I think she has been probably the most outstanding member of parliament in the entire Nnp.
That says a lot there. More than Peter David and more than Dr. Clarence Modest-Cohen. But Mr. Batista, I'll bring you in here, sir, to assess. Give us an assessment of these 4 MPs. Do you
really want to do that?
Yes, we want that honest view of the 4 Nnp MPs. Are they adequately serving their constituents?
If I had to give a grade, if I would give a grade, I would say I would maybe give an F.
Mm-hmm.
And let me start first with a representative of St. Andrews Southeast. I mean, here is a lady that was minister responsible for youth. She had one of the largest youth budget in the history of Grenada. Look at the state of our youth today. As a matter of fact, she has failed so badly that the Prime Minister now, in the departure lounge, have to take over the Ministry of Youth. Look at the area she represents. Let's look at Telescope. Telescope is a melting pot, the bedrock of poverty. And here you have a representative trying to be queen of Grenada, queen of St. Andrews. Telescope.
Queen of St. Andrews. It's very colorful language there. But go ahead.
Subies, Maki, Monfan. They represent eyesores of poverty in St. Andrews. She has not a clue of what's going on. Not a clue of what's going on in St. Andrews. We have yet to hear from this representative one day of a comprehensive plan to eradicate poverty in St. Andrews. But she runs around. She's the minister responsible for handouts. Handouts just not doing it. Telescope is an eyesore on the mouth of Grenville. What's her plan? She's been there now for over 15, going on 20 years now. She has been a representative. She has not laid out no plans for Telescope. She has failed as minister responsible for youth. She's now taken on minister responsible for religion. I don't know what that is, but maybe we could, later on we could discuss that. That is a representative that has failed the people. Her presence as a minister of Southeast St. Andrews have not done anything to improve on the lives of people, save and accept a few handouts that she's given people. So she has failed miserably. St. Andrews Southwest. What can we say? She'll go through the motion. There's not a project in St. Andrews Southwest, save and except those that were started by humble servant, that stands out. They're not with the youths, not with general people, except going around handpicking some people and victimizing those that are not supporting her. She does not have the initiative to be an MP. You cannot petition your government to have a refrigerator in St. Andrews where we can store a pint of blood. So my daughter have to die because she could not get a pint of blood in St. Andrews, and you have to wait until her blood level drops so bad you have to carry her to the St. David's and to General Hospital. By the time she get there, she got into cardiac arrest. We cannot get a birth certificate, a death certificate in St. Andrews, and you want to be Queen of St. Andrews? You're here, member of St. Andrews Southeast. Where is your compassion? You talk about religion. Where is your compassion to the poor? Have you spent one day in Princess Alice Hospital to see what's going on there? No medication. It is not a constituency hospital. It is a hospital affecting the people of St. Andrews. Look at the rate of vagrancy and beggars we have in St. Andrews. Poor housing, poor drainage in Telescope and the surrounding areas that you represent. How have you used your influence in government to improve on the lives of people? How have you done so? We have a situation in St. Andrews where agriculture have collapsed. Underemployment. Hopelessness. The most beggars we're seeing now is people hopeless, crying out. They stuck in an Imani program that you help engineer that's not getting them to anywhere. So I can't give you a passing grade. You are close to the Prime Minister. You've been there longer than the member in Northwest or Northeast. How come St. Andrews is in such poor, dilapidated condition? Why we don't have a working generator in Princess Alice Hospital? Why we cannot do a blood test in Princess Alice Hospital? Why we do not have an X-ray machine working there? Why is it they install a clinic in Princess Alice, and you could not find workers to start that clinic? You've been there for a long time, want to be Queen of St. Andrews, but yet the problems around you you're not seeing. You can't pray yourself out of the problems in St. Andrews. You must stand up as a senior member. You are more senior than the others, and identify the problems in St. Andrews and deal with it. And stop trying to pass the buck and giving handouts. Handouts not solving problems, unfortunately. So if you ask me about St. Andrews, I would say the MPs in St. Andrews, they have failed the people. They have failed the people, some more than others, because some they have been there for the longest time. What's your contribution? I want to ask the representative of St. Andrews Southeast, what's your contribution? You believe by putting up giving two people 2 toilets in Marquis or Telescope, that is eradicating poverty? Where is your plan? You're Minister of Education. Half our youths are undereducated. Where is the skills training? We have 4 high schools in St. Andrews. Can you come up with a plan in the Ministry of Education where we could have technical education in the evenings or so? Where is your plan for education? So if you're asking me again, I will tell you that we are in difficult times because the parish of St. Andrews have 4 MPs who by and large have not dealt with the problems affecting St. Andrews, and then we have 4 MPs, we have 4 candidates coming up. Prospective candidate coming up who have never been in touch with the ordinary people. They are bringing people before us who are distant from the people. In order for you to represent people, you have to invite yourself into the feelings and the sufferings of the people. And on that note, I say failure with what we have, and it's gloomy in what we see.
Okay. Now let us come up for air, Mr. Batiste. You said a lot here. You a lot of food for thought that would give the public an opportunity to ruminate on. So we will take a quick break, and then we would come back to close the program. And of course, as we close the program, we want to get from our panelists expectations for this election season. What are your expectations with respect to how this election season should proceed? So folks, stand by. We will take a quick break and we will be right back. Why would we have ambassadors representing the state that do not understand clearly what their terms of reference are?
To the cards that I have drawn that I am the minister at this point in time. And for members of the public...
You're also a servant of the people. The unions are not threatening to withdraw their labor, and neither are they threatening to shut the country down, as you did.
I think your summarization of my position is highly inaccurate, and may I dare say a bit inflammatory.
The strategy did not work the last time for you. So what would make this?
Well, you're assuming that we're doing the same strategy.
And welcome back, folks. We were joined today by Ms. Cassandra Mitchell and two former members of Parliament, Mr. Kenny Larsing and Mr. Michael Batiste. They quickly corrected me to say that while they're no longer in frontline politics, but say that they're always politicians. I guess
I have never retired.
For life.
I have never retired.
You've never retired. You've never retired.
No.
So I want to thank you all for appearing on the program today. But Cassandra, ladies first, I know that in the last election, civil society organizations were making appeals to both political parties to sign the Code of Political Conduct. Do you anticipate that would happen? Or do you feel as if the politics in Grenada has evolved, or some might say devolved, into a place where these very core matters, these esoteric matters, don't really matter anymore?
Yes, I agree. And interestingly enough, this morning I was having this conversation, looking at the main opposition entity. For instance, one of the things that bothers me as an elector is the fact that they have moved away from a lot of the beliefs that they once stood for, the things that they once stood for. And I've said it to some of them. Of course, the incumbent is the incumbent. I remember them not signing the Code of Political Conduct, so we don't expect any change, quite honestly, at the moment. But no, I am looking forward to hearing discourse, debates, maybe between the candidates for the respective constituencies on policy positions, how they're going to really address the issues that are affecting Grenadians, the real issues. And while yes, the song and the fun and the laughter and the dancing is all anticipated and enjoyed by many, there are those of us who really like to see more focus on real issues here in Grenada, on unemployment, underemployment. We talk about food security, agriculture, relationships with other countries. One of the things that I'm concerned about is the Grenada-China relationship, the Grenada-Russia relationship. We have seen Grenada as a member state of the UN supporting other member states and removing Russia, for instance, from the UN Human Rights Council and all those things. How are these going to have these decisions going to affect our relationship as a state with Russia moving forward? So real issues need to be discussed, so that is what I am looking forward to, and I'm sure there are many others like me.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And we will watch this space here on the Bubb Report. But good luck, Godspeed there, Cassandra, with respect to getting the candidates to do debates when the leader, at least of the incumbent New National Party, has not been one to agree to have a debate with the opposition parties in this country. I mean, that has been his record. We have been trying to get him to appear on this program. That has not materialized.
We have to assert our power as people and remind them that we are the employers and we need to hear from them. So until then these things are just going to continue to happen.
Absolutely. Very well. Mr. Larsing, over to you, sir. What are your expectations? You've said a lot here with respect to what your initial observations were. Of course, elections have have an evolution of their own, and so and you've been in it. It can be unpredictable, right? So, what are your thoughts with respect to your expectations for this election campaign season that we are about to enter into?
I want to agree with Ms. Mitchell that we need to look forward with healthy debates, even debates among the candidates. I remember in St. Patrick, we have had debates during my time. So you speak about what you're going to do for your constituency, and you also speak about ideas on the broader sector. But I want to go back to Michael Baptiste, the points that he made. And it is a problem that the Nnp is facing from ever since. The MPs are sidelined to just do the small projects in their constituencies. The bigger overall project has to come from the leader. And that has been a problem plaguing them. So you find the MPs dealing with a by road, toilets, bathroom, and the smaller things in the constituency. Anything of a larger nature, a large project, if it is not approved by the present political leader and prime minister, it will never happen. So they will always be in that position that Mr. Baptiste has just talked about. They can't do more than what they are doing. But of course, what they are doing, and I agree with him, is insufficient as an MP, as a minister. And he has pointed out so many things that they should be doing to help reduce poverty, to help reduce cost of living, to help make life better. And I just want to also say, and I've been saying that on Facebook and other media, the educators have failed us. Education, something is wrong with it. We are only teaching our young people, go to school, get a few subjects to get a job. And when you dump them on the society, they come to the workplace, they don't have a clue about life after school. And that's a problem we face it. Even those who come from universities, they don't have a clue about the job that they have studied so very well and get a degree. They're unable to perform the job because nobody taught them about life after school, about what is expected of you. So they come to the workplace, and we have to keep training them and retraining them in order to get them to understand what they have to do. So my big question here is, the educators have failed us. And I hope we will see in this election, and I want to reiterate, issues, all the various issues in every area. And I want to see the candidates in live debates about what you are going to do, what you see as the future of your constituency and the country. You must enunciate it and get us to understand that you have a grip of the situation and you can change it if you get elected.
Absolutely. And Mr. Batista, final word to you, sir.
Well, what was the question again? What was the
your expectations for this election cycle?
Well, I expect that the new National Party would cruise into victory. I expect them. I believe that the National Democratic Congress are out playing defense. And in other words, they try not to get another 50-0. What they need to do at this point, and it's not too late, Take the fight to the incumbent. The leader of the NDC must stop trying to be a celebrity and try to be a liberator of the vulnerable, the suffering people out there. Your approach to the politics is wrong. You came in late. Come on the ground and start trying to be like an ordinary person. Discuss the issues. There's abundance of issues. Kenny raised one earlier, which I did a voice clip on some time ago. The high cost of living, freight. And I'm asking the NDC leader, join us. Tell the leader of the new National Party and the Prime Minister of Grenada that since COVID, freight has quadrupled. As a result of the freight, it has a negative impact on the cost of living. And here's how. Custom duties are pegged against CIF, cost, insurance, and freight. A container leaving China now is a 20-foot container leaving China now is almost $18,000 US. Prior to the pandemic and this thing in Ukraine, it was $5,000–6,000. You are not addressing that opposition. You are not addressing the high cost of living. Why are you afraid to talk about the high cost of electricity? Talk about that. Talk about the health situation. Talk about the underemployment of people. Don't talk about eliminating Imanis. Talk about upgrading it. Because between me and you, we need more Imanis. And I tell you how. Since 1985, the new National Party and the National Democratic Congress have failed to expand on the economy of Grenada. And what they do? Send you in the public service. Give you dead-end jobs. Crash program, Imani, traffic warden. In other words, let you eat a food. Nothing substantial. Now we have to look at how we expand on the economic activities in Grenada so that the consolidated fund is not the last resort for people, and we wouldn't have that problem with the pension. Because when we pack too many people on the public service, you know what happened to that. So come on the ground, talk real issues. Talk about the judicial system. I challenged Jerry Seals when he was sending young people to prison for matters that did not call for custodial sentence. I did not hear you. Talk about court reform. Talk about court reform. How we have alternative sentencing for some of our young people. Some of our young people are frustrated. Don't talk about marijuana. That's not doing it today. Let's talk about alternative sentences, judicial reform, not constitutional reform, because we have the best constitution in the region. Talk judicial reform. How we avoid sending all these young people to prison for minor offenses. And let's talk about how we move forward. You could talk about obeying the court order. What you gonna obey the court order with? Can't you understand? Our country is in problems, serious financial problems. We have a debt crisis here. We signed a Paris Club agreement. We defaulted on that. We owe millions of dollars to foreign banks. There is some hidden loans that we don't even know about. So don't make no promises about that has financial implications, because you don't know what you're going to meet. What we need to do now, talk about self-sufficiency. We go into St. Vincent and we purchasing livestock from St. Vincent. How we get Grenadians now to develop work ethics? Kenny could tell you. Kenny is a proprietor. I admire him. One of the best local politicians in rural Grenada I ever met, Kenny. Talk about work ethics. How are we going to get our people to do a fair day's work for a fair day's pay? Because now we have developed a culture of a gimme. You go in 9 o'clock in the morning and you come home 2 o'clock for political reasons. That can't work anymore. Tell them we have a responsibility, but every man must do a fair day's work for a fair day's pay. Let's talk real issues to the people. And then you're going to get a hearing. Stop trying to be a celebrity. We don't need celebrity politicians. The only two we had was Eric Gary and Maurice Bishop to a point, and they left landmarks. What you need now is a savior. How we get ourselves out of the mess that we're in, the health crisis, no medication in the hospital, not a pint of blood in Maribor. We have health workers that's depressed, and we need to resurrect our dying rural economy. I would stop here with that.
All right, Mr. Batista, thank you so much for your contribution. We would certainly be relying on you two gentlemen, because what we need is that we need to have independent critiques of both parties. And I believe that is something that is missing in the stew of the current political environment in the country.
I may have to exclude myself because I may very well be a participant in the upcoming general elections. I know.
Well, you're breaking news here, Mr. Lansing. Are you also going to be running as a candidate?
You see,
no. I have no intention whatsoever.
Well, I can't feel like you, Kenny, because you see, my politics is not about winning. My politics is about talking about the issues affecting the people. And since no party, the two parties are dancing around each other and they're not talking about the issue, they need a Michael Batiste to come and talk real issues to real people, and don't worry about results. As you very well know, I don't even care how the results would go. As long as I talk about the issues, I believe I can. I believe I win.
Mr. Lansing, are you going to be joining Mr. Batista on this crusade? I take that as a yes by your laughter there, nervous laughter.
I will always speak about issues. There's so many issues to speak about, and from time to time I will speak about it, because I believe if I can say something and make a difference, so be it.
Absolutely. Ladies and gentlemen, we are out of time. Thank you so much. We will be having a part 2. We want to have a civil society conversation in the lead up to the election. And so, Cassandra, you would be invited back. Of course, we're hoping to also invite the Parliamentary Elections Office back as well, because there were some unanswered questions that need to be answered that we need to address. So I want to thank all of you for appearing on the Bubb Report this week. Viewers and listeners, that was Mr. Kenny Lansing, former Member of Parliament for the St. Patrick West constituency, Mr. Michael Batiste, former Minister of Agriculture, also former Member of Parliament and Leader of the Opposition for the St. Andrew Southwest constituency. And he's saying here that he might actually contest that seat. So, Mr. Batiste, thanks for breaking some news here on the Bubb Report. And Ms. Cassandra Mitchell of the Civil Society grouping of organizations. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you again for your appearance on the Bubb Report. And viewers and listeners, we will see you next week. Take care. Bye-bye.